The storm's revelation. The winds of Europa howled across the icy plains as Olivia Reed guided her rescue vessel through the thickening storm. The Jupiter moon's surface, usually a pristine canvas of crystalline white, had become a blur of swirling snow and debris. Warning lights flashed across her console as the craft's systems struggled against conditions that pushed well beyond their operational limits. "Base, this is Reed," she called out, her voice steady despite the violent shaking of her cockpit. "Still tracking that anomalous signal. Visibility dropping to near zero." The response came broken and distorted. "Reed, turn back, conditions critical." Olivia's jaw tightened as she studied the signal's readout. Something about its pattern seemed deliberately structured, not the random emissions of Europa's frequent electromagnetic storms. Someone was out there, and in her 15 years as a rescue pilot, she'd never abandoned a potential survivor. The craft lurched suddenly, caught in a powerful updraft. Olivia's hands flew across the controls, compensating for the turbulence. Her vessel, the Hyperion, was top-of-the-line rescue equipment, but Europa's storms had a way of humbling even the most advanced human technology. Through gaps in the whiteout, she caught glimpses of the surface below. The ice sheets were fractured here, creating a maze of crevasses and pressure ridges. The signal was growing stronger, pulling her toward a particularly treacherous section of terrain. Then she saw it, a glint of metal that didn't belong among Europa's natural formations. As she brought the Hyperion lower, the shape became clear, a vessel of unmistakably alien design, its sleek hull partially buried in the ice. Its surface bore elaborate patterns that seemed to shift and flow, even under the thick layer of frost that had accumulated. "Base, I've found something," Olivia transmitted, knowing the storm would likely garble her words beyond recognition. "It's not one of ours." She set the Hyperion down carefully, using the alien craft's bulk as a windbreak. The storm's roar became a muffled howl as she donned her extreme environment suit, checking each seal twice. Europa's surface temperature hovered around -160 degrees Celsius, cold enough to freeze the hydraulics in her suit if she stayed out too long. The moment she stepped outside, the wind tried to knock her off her feet. She activated her suit's magnetic boots, each step becoming a deliberate anchoring against the moon's weak gravity and fierce storm. As she approached the alien vessel, her helmet lights revealed more detail in its strange architecture. The craft was about twice the size of her rescue vessel, with what appeared to be a research array mounted on its aft section. A breach in the hull caught her attention, not from the crash, but what looked like an emergency access port, deliberately opened. Someone had survived the landing. Olivia approached cautiously, her suit's sensors probing for any signs of radiation or hostile environments. The access port led to a small airlock chamber. Inside, she found evidence of recent activity, equipment had been moved, emergency supplies gathered. Her light beam caught something else, small droplets of liquid, frozen solid before they could hit the deck. The color was wrong for human blood, it was a deep, luminescent purple. Following the trail, she made her way deeper into the vessel. The interior architecture was both beautiful and disorienting, with corridors that curved in mathematically perfect spirals. Her sensors detected a faint heat signature ahead, accompanied by irregular energy readings. She rounded a final curve and stopped short. In what appeared to be the ship's main cabin, two figures huddled near a failing heat generator. The larger one rose immediately, moving with fluid grace despite an obvious injury to its side. The being stood nearly 7 feet tall, with iridescent scales that shifted between deep blue and violet. Its four-fingered hands ended in retractable claws, currently extended in a defensive posture. Behind it crouched a smaller figure, clearly juvenile, its scales a lighter shade that hadn't yet developed the same iridescent quality. Both aliens had large, multifaceted eyes that reflected Olivia's lights in fascinating patterns. "Stay back," the adult alien said in perfect English, though the words seemed to come from somewhere other than its mouth, likely some form of translation technology. "We will not be taken prisoner." Olivia slowly raised her hands, palms forward. "I'm a rescue pilot," she said clearly. "I picked up your distress signal. I'm here to help." The alien's head tilted slightly, those fascinating eyes studying her with intense focus. "A rescue pilot? Your kind would risk their lives for unknown beings." "It's what we do," Olivia replied simply. "Your heat generator is failing. I have a properly equipped vessel less than 50 meters away. You're both showing signs of extreme cold exposure. Let me help you." The alien's defensive posture softened slightly, though Olivia noticed it was trembling, either from cold or injury. "I am Dr. Naira Voss, xenobiologist of the Centauri Science Academy. This is my ward, Kai." The smaller alien peered around Naira with undisguised curiosity. "We were conducting research on Europa's subsurface composition when the storm damaged our sensors. The crash was not optimal." "I'm Olivia Reed," she responded, then gestured to the purple stains that marked Naira's side. "You're injured. I have medical supplies in my vessel. Basic, but better than freezing to death here." Naira seemed to wage an internal battle, glancing between Olivia and Kai. Finally, the alien scientist nodded. "Your offer is appreciated. But understand, if this is deception, if you threaten Kai in any way." "No deception," Olivia assured her. "Just a human who couldn't ignore someone in trouble. Now, can you both walk? We need to move quickly before the storm gets worse." As they made their way back through the alien vessel, Olivia noticed Naira's irregular gait and positioned herself to offer support. The alien scientist hesitated only briefly before accepting the help. Young Kai followed close behind, occasionally chirping something in their native language that made Naira respond with what sounded like gentle reassurance. The storm's intensity had doubled in the short time Olivia had been inside the alien craft. The 50-meter journey to the Hyperion became an arduous battle against wind and ice, with Olivia physically anchoring her companions against the worst gusts. By the time they reached her vessel's airlock, all three were exhausted. Inside the Hyperion's cabin, Olivia quickly activated the emergency heating protocols while retrieving her medical kit. As warmth began to fill the space, she watched Naira and Kai's scales slowly shift through different color patterns, perhaps their species equivalent of shivering. "Your vessel's design is remarkably robust," Naira observed, watching Olivia prep various medical supplies. "Though perhaps not as aesthetically refined as ours. We tend to favor function over form in rescue craft," Olivia replied with a small smile. "Those of us working Europa's storms learned that lesson the hard way." She held up a medical scanner. "May I? I need to assess your injury." Naira nodded, then spoke softly to Kai in their language. The young alien settled nearby, watching the proceedings with obvious fascination. As Olivia began her examination, she couldn't help but marvel at the complexity of Naira's biological structure. The wound itself appeared to be a deep gash, but the alien's cellular structure was already attempting to repair the damage in ways her scanner could barely interpret. "Your species has remarkable healing capabilities," Olivia noted as she carefully cleaned the wound. "And yours has remarkable compassion," Naira responded quietly. "Few among my people would risk themselves for unknown beings in such conditions. It is not logical." "Logic isn't everything," Olivia said, applying a synthetic healing patch to the injury. "Sometimes the most important things in life don't make logical sense at all. Trust in the cold." The Hyperion's warning systems blared to life, their harsh tones cutting through the relative quiet of the cabin. Olivia's hands flew to the control panel, her expression grim as she interpreted the readouts. "The storm's intensifying," she announced, glancing at her alien passengers. "We can't make it back to base in these conditions. We'll have to find shelter and wait it out." Naira moved closer to the console, her iridescent scales reflecting the emergency lights in hypnotic patterns. "There," she said, pointing to a geographical formation on the display. Our initial surveys indicated a network of ice caves in that region. The geological composition should provide adequate protection. Olivia studied the coordinates. The caves were closer than base camp, but reaching them meant navigating through the storm's heart. She looked at Kai, who had fallen into an exhausted sleep in one of the acceleration chairs, then at Naira's barely healed wound. They had no choice. "Hold on," she warned, engaging the Hyperion's engines. The vessel shuddered as it lifted off, immediately buffeted by violent wind gusts. Olivia's world narrowed to the task of keeping them airborne, every muscle tense as she fought the controls. Naira remained standing behind her, one hand gripping the back of Olivia's chair. "Your skill is impressive," the alien scientist observed. Few pilots could maintain stability in these conditions. "Years of practice," Olivia replied through gritted teeth, executing a careful turn to avoid a particularly nasty updraft. "Though I've never had such interesting passengers before." A sound emerged from Naira that Olivia realized was laughter, musical and strange. "We find you equally interesting, Olivia Reed. Your actions challenge many of our preconceptions about humans." The cave system appeared through the swirling snow, a dark maw in the white expanse. Olivia guided the Hyperion into the largest entrance, the vessel's external lights illuminating walls of ancient ice. She set them down in a natural chamber large enough to accommodate the craft with room to spare. "The ice here is stable," Naira noted, studying readings on her own device. "Formed over millions of years under intense pressure. We should be safe." "Safe, but stuck," Olivia added, powering down non-essential systems to conserve energy. "The storm's likely to last at least 20 hours. We have supplies, but we'll need to be careful with power consumption." She turned to find Naira watching her with those fascinating multifaceted eyes. The alien scientist had moved to check on Kai, one hand resting protectively on the young one's shoulder. "You are concerned about depleting your resources by sharing them with us." "No," Olivia said firmly. "I'm concerned about keeping all of us alive until this storm passes. We're in this together now." Naira's scales shifted to a deeper violet, a response to emotion, Olivia guessed, though she couldn't interpret its meaning. "Together," Naira repeated, as if testing the word. "An unusual concept for my people. We pride ourselves on self-reliance. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is accept help," Olivia said, retrieving emergency rations from a storage compartment. She offered some to Naira. "These aren't exactly gourmet, but they're designed to be compatible with most carbon-based life forms." Naira accepted the ration, examining it carefully before taking a small bite. Her facial features rearranged themselves in what Olivia interpreted as surprise. "The taste is not unpleasant. You've clearly had contact with other species before." "We've learned to be prepared," Olivia confirmed, settling into her chair. "Though official contact has been limited. Most species prefer to observe us from a distance." "Yes, humans have a rather intense reputation," Naira said, her tone carrying a hint of amusement. "Unpredictable. Emotional. Dangerous." She paused. A deafening crack shattered the relative peace of their ice cave shelter. Olivia jolted awake, her hand automatically reaching for the controls. Above them, the ancient ice groaned ominously, new fissures spreading like lightning across the ceiling. "Naira!" Olivia called out, already running system diagnostics. "We need to move." The alien scientist was already in motion, securing Kai with swift efficiency. "The thermal variations are causing structural failures throughout the cave system," she reported, her scales shifting to an intense cobalt blue that Olivia now recognized as stress. "The integrity of this chamber is compromised." The Hyperion's engines whined in protest as Olivia attempted to power up. Come on," she muttered, watching critical systems flash warning signals. The extreme cold had affected more components than she'd anticipated. Another thunderous crack split the air. Massive chunks of ice began falling around them, forcing Olivia to make a split-second decision. We can't wait for full power, we have to go now. She hit the emergency release for the cabin door. Bring only what you can carry. We'll have to find another shelter on foot. Naira didn't argue, quickly gathering essential supplies while keeping Kai close. The young alien scales had paled to an almost white shade, but they moved with remarkable composure for one so young. They barely cleared the Hyperion when the first major section of the ceiling collapsed, crushing the rear of the vessel. The impact sent shockwaves through the ice beneath their feet, nearly knocking them over. Olivia's mind raced as she consulted her wrist computer's map display. There's another chamber about half a kilometer from here, she shouted over the continuing collapse. The readings suggest it's more stable, formed by different geological processes. The connecting tunnels may also be unstable, Naira warned, supporting Kai as they navigated the treacherous footing. We'll need to move quickly but carefully. They pressed forward into the maze of ice tunnels, their path illuminated by the combined glow of Olivia's suit lights and the natural bioluminescence of her companion's scales. The storm's fury penetrated even here, creating an otherworldly howl that echoed through the passages. Kai stumbled, letting out a high-pitched trill of distress. Before Naira could react, Olivia had scooped up the young alien in her arms. Save your strength, she told Naira, noting how the scientist's wound had begun to seep purple fluid again. I've got them. Something complex passed through Naira's multifaceted eyes, surprise, gratitude, and something deeper that Olivia couldn't quite read. They pressed on, the ice growing more unstable with each passing minute. The temperature is dropping rapidly, Naira observed, her voice tight with concern. Our biological heating mechanisms are struggling to compensate. Olivia noticed the diminishing intensity of their bioluminescence. How bad? Below critical levels for sustained consciousness, Naira admitted. Kai is particularly vulnerable. We normally enter a form of hibernation in extreme cold, but the process requires specific conditions. Another section of tunnel collapsed behind them, the shock wave sending them stumbling forward. Olivia held Kai tighter, feeling the young alien's trembling intensify. There. Naira pointed ahead. The tunnel opened into a vast chamber, its walls lined with strange, spiral formations. These patterns, they're created by thermal vents. This chamber should be more stable. They had barely entered the space when a massive tremor shook the entire cave system. Olivia turned to see the tunnel they just exited collapse completely, sealing them in. The chamber's only other exit was a narrow fissure high up one wall, barely visible in their combined light. Well, Olivia said, trying to keep her tone light as she set Kai down carefully, at least nothing else can fall on us in here. Naira made a sound that might have been a laugh, though it held an edge of exhaustion. Your species' ability to find humor in dire situations continues to fascinate me. She swayed slightly, her scales flickering erratically. Olivia caught her before she could fall, pulling her close. The alien scientist's skin was alarmingly cold. Hey, stay with me. No hibernating yet, we need that brilliant mind of yours working. Brilliant, am I? Naira murmured, her translation technology making the words slightly slurred. High praise from a species that crossed the void between stars through sheer determination. Flattery will get you everywhere, Olivia replied, already pulling out thermal blankets from her emergency pack. She created a small shelter against one wall, positioning them to take advantage of what little heat rose from the thermal vents below. Kai curled up between them, chirping softly in their native language. Naira responded with what sounded like reassurance, but Olivia could hear the strain in her voice. Tell me about your homeworld, Olivia said, trying to keep them both conscious as she worked to boost the output of her suit's heating system. All those fascinating discoveries waiting for brilliant scientists like you. Trying to keep us awake through conversation. Naira's eyes flickered with amusement. A transparent but effective technique. She paused, her scales shifting to a deep, rich purple. Though perhaps I simply enjoy sharing knowledge with someone who understands the drive to explore, to learn, to connect. Their eyes met in the dim light, and for a moment, the cold and danger seemed to recede. Olivia felt something shift between them, a recognition of kindred spirits, despite their vast differences. The moment was broken by another ominous rumble, this one deeper and more distant. Olivia checked her instruments, frowning at the readings. The storm's actually getting worse. I didn't think that was possible. Nature, Naira observed, often exceeds our expectations. Much like certain humans who rescue strange aliens in impossible conditions. Speaking of impossible conditions, Olivia said, studying her map display, that fissure up there might lead to the surface. If we can reach it, we might find a way back to civilization. Assuming we don't freeze first. An interesting challenge, Naira replied, her scientific curiosity seemingly overwhelming her exhaustion for a moment. Though perhaps we should focus on maintaining body temperature before attempting further feats of human determination. As if in response, Kai snuggled closer between them, their combined body heat creating a small pocket of warmth in the vast, frozen chamber. Above them, through the fissure, the storm continued to rage across Europa's surface, while deep within the ice, two beings from different worlds found themselves drawing closer, united by circumstance and something more profound than mere survival. The thermal vent beneath them suddenly hissed, releasing a burst of warm vapor that momentarily fogged Olivia's helmet display. She'd been studying the fissure above them for hours, mapping possible climbing routes while monitoring their declining situation. The geological activity is increasing, Naira observed, her scientific instincts apparently undiminished by their dire circumstances. The storm must be affecting Europa's subsurface dynamics. Then we can't wait any longer, Olivia decided, checking her suit's power reserves. That fissure is our best chance. My suit's heating system can still support two for a short time. Naira's scales rippled with concern as she looked at Kai, who had finally fallen into a light sleep. The young one's core temperature is too low for sustained activity. And my injury. I know, Olivia said softly. That's why we need to move now, while you both still can. She pulled out her last emergency heating pack, activating it. This will help, but it won't last long. The alien scientist was quiet for a moment, her multifaceted eyes studying Olivia with an intensity that seemed to peer straight into her soul. You continue to risk everything for us. Why? Because it's the right thing to do, Olivia replied simply. Then, with a slight smile, and because I've grown rather fond of my alien refugees. Naira's scales shifted to a deep rose color, a shade Olivia hadn't seen before. Fond, she repeated, the translation technology giving the word a peculiar emphasis. Another of those illogical human emotions that somehow produce remarkable results. They worked quickly to prepare for the climb, using strips torn from thermal blankets to create makeshift harnesses. Kai woke fully alert, displaying the remarkable adaptability of youth. The young alien chirped something to Naira that made her scales flutter in what Olivia had learned was amusement. What did they say? Olivia asked as she secured the last knot. They said humans are much warmer than the educational archives suggested, Naira translated, her tone carrying a hint of something more than mere academic interest. Both physically and, otherwise. The climb was treacherous. The ice walls were smooth in some places, treacherously sharp in others. Olivia led the way, creating handholds with her suit's emergency laser tool. Naira followed with Kai secured between them, her natural climbing abilities hampered by her injury but still impressive. Halfway up, a violent tremor shook the chamber. Olivia pressed herself against the ice wall, anchoring their safety line as chunks of frozen debris rained down around them. Below, she heard the thermal vent explode with a thunderous roar. Olivia! Naira called out, her voice tight with pain. The alien scientist had twisted to shield Kai from falling ice, reopening her wound. Hold on. Olivia began working her way down to them, her heart pounding. The chamber was filling with steam from the ruptured vent, the temperature fluctuations causing the ice to crack and groan around them. She reached Naira and Kai, finding them pressed into a small alcove. Naira's scales had faded to an alarming gray, but her grip on Kai remained firm. "I can't," she started to say. "Yes, you can," Olivia interrupted. "I didn't come all this way to lose you now." She secured an additional line to her suit's anchor points. "Trust me." Those remarkable eyes met hers again. "Always," Naira replied, and the simple word carried layers of meaning that transcended their different species. Olivia took most of their weight on her suit's enhanced strength systems, essentially carrying both aliens the rest of the way up. Her muscles screamed with effort, power warnings flashed across her display, but she didn't stop until they reached the fissure's mouth. They emerged onto Europa's surface to find the storm had actually intensified. The wind was a solid wall of ice and fury, visibility reduced to mere meters. But Olivia's suit picked up something else, a signal, weak but steady. "There's a research outpost," she shouted over the storm's roar. 3 kilometers east. "It's not my base, but it's civilization." Naira's translator struggled with her reply, the words breaking up. "Your determination, remarkable, inspiring." Olivia pulled them close, sharing what warmth her suit could still provide. "Save the compliments for when we're safe. Right now, we move." They set out into the storm, 3 beings from different worlds bound together by circumstance and growing bonds of trust and affection. Kai remained surprisingly strong, chirping encouragement in their native language. Naira's steps faltered occasionally, but she pressed on with characteristic determination. And Olivia, watching over them both, felt something crystallize in her heart, a certainty that transcended the mere duty of rescue. The outpost's lights appeared through the whiteout like distant stars, growing stronger with each step. As they approached, Olivia's radio crackled to life with the first human voices they'd heard in days. She found herself grinning as she responded, knowing that what awaited them wasn't just safety, but the beginning of something much more significant. Naira's hand found hers as they made their final approach, their fingers intertwining despite their different anatomies. No words were needed, some connections, it seemed, required no translation at all. The research outpost's medical bay hummed with activity as doctors of both species worked together, sharing knowledge and techniques. Olivia watched through the observation window as Naira's wounds were treated with a combination of human and Centaurian medical technology. Kai sat beside her, the young alien's scales now returned to their healthy, luminescent state. "Your guardian is strong," Olivia said softly. "She'll be fine." Kai chirped a response that Olivia's newly upgraded translator rendered as, "strong like you. You saved us both." The door slid open, and Director Thomas, the outpost's commander, approached with a data pad. "The Centaurian Science Council is quite interested in this situation. They're sending a diplomatic vessel." "How interested?" Olivia asked, not taking her eyes off Naira. "Enough to propose formal relations with Earth. It seems Dr. Voss's unauthorized research mission might accidentally accomplish more than she intended." He paused. "They'll want to debrief all of you." "They can wait," Olivia said firmly. "She needs to recover first." The director nodded, a knowing look in his eyes. "Of course. Though you should know, they're particularly interested in how a human rescue pilot would risk everything to save unknown aliens. It challenges their entire perception of our species." Hours later, Olivia sat beside Naira's recovery bed, watching the alien scientist's scales shift through peaceful patterns of blue and violet. The medical team had successfully repaired her injury using a revolutionary combination of both species' healing techniques. "You're staring," Naira said without opening her eyes, her translator now fully functional again. "Hard not to," Olivia replied with a smile. "You're quite beautiful when you're not freezing to death." Naira's scales rippled with that now familiar rose color. Humans. Always leading with emotions. She opened her eyes, their multifaceted depths capturing Olivia's gaze. Though perhaps that's not the weakness my people always assumed it to be. What will you do now? Olivia asked. The Science Council wants to establish a joint research initiative, Naira finished. Our encounter has shifted perspectives. They're calling it a breakthrough in interspecies relations. She reached out, her four-fingered hand finding Olivia's. They've offered me a position leading the initiative. Here on Europa. Olivia's heart skipped. Here. It seems my unauthorized mission has been retroactively approved, given the results. Naira's scales shimmered with amusement. They're particularly interested in studying human emergency response techniques. Something about their remarkable effectiveness. And Kai? The young alien appeared as if summoned, climbing onto the bed with surprising agility. I stay too, they chirped. Much to learn from humans. From one human in particular, I think, Naira added softly, her eyes meeting Olivia's with an intensity that made the room seem to fade away. You know, Olivia said, Europa's rescue service could use an expert in xenobiology. The storms aren't getting any calmer, and we're seeing more alien traffic these days. Are you offering me a job, rescue pilot Reed? I'm offering you a partnership. Olivia squeezed her hand gently. In more ways than one. Naira's scales shifted to a deep, rich gold, a color Olivia had never seen before. Partnership, she repeated thoughtfully. Another of those human concepts that grows more appealing with exposure. Outside the medical bay's windows, Europa's endless storm continued to rage. But within, two beings from different worlds had found something that transcended their differences, a connection forged in ice and danger, strengthened by trust and understanding, and now blossoming into something their respective species had never quite imagined possible. Kai chirped something that made Naira laugh musically. At Olivia's questioning look, she translated, they said that according to probability calculations, the chances of this outcome were infinitesimal. Good thing humans don't put much stock in probabilities, Olivia replied, drawing closer. We prefer to make our own chances. As their lips and scales met in a first tentative kiss, Olivia reflected that some chances were worth taking, no matter the odds. Above them, Jupiter's vast form filled the sky, a constant reminder of the infinite possibilities that awaited when different worlds came together. The storm that had brought them together continued its eternal dance across Europa's surface, but within the outpost, a new kind of warmth had taken root, one that promised to change both their worlds, one rescue mission at a time.